Thank you everyone for being here. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is 6:02 p.m.
Cindy.
And at this time I would ask that everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And staff, could you please call the roll? Okay.
Jack Chadwick.
Present.
Damon Collins.
Present.
Liz Darrow.
Present.
Joe Ellenboss.
Present.
Lindsey Graham Ellenboss.
Present.
Colton Kaltenfeld.
Present.
Brad Kelly.
Present.
Maya Morales.
Present.
John Muchler.
Present.
Anna Ordos.
Present.
Joel Fitzjordan.
Present.
Andrew Reddy.
Present.
Jessica Rinstra.
Present.
Rod Stump.
Present.
Jennifer Wright.
Present.
You forget who you are?
Say what?
You forget who you are?
I just.
Okay, are there any amendments to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We're going to approve that by consent. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Is it? Oh, okay. Is this helpful? It doesn't really seem to do anything. Okay, good. We're going to move on now to general public comment. Members of the... okay. Thank you. Sorry, right before public comment, I want to invite the mayor, who is hosting us here tonight, to go ahead and give his comments. Welcome.
Great. Thank you for coming to Linden. Welcome to town. I hope you have a great meeting this evening. In Linden, like everywhere in the county, we're doing comp plan reviews and we're doing growth numbers for the future. For Linden, we're concerned about how fast we're growing. We're growing maybe faster than we want to, and so there's ways that we can put growth into other areas rather than in rural communities next to ag land. Maybe that's something we should be looking at. Also, water adjudication, that's a big concern for our farmers in the area, and so and as a city, we're concerned about water consumption as well, so water is a big issue for us. And when it comes to growth areas, the cost of housing is getting crazy in our county, in our state, but particularly in our county. And so if you can do anything to keep housing costs down, that would be great. So that's an easy one. Just take care of that one tonight and I'll go home happy. And remember the small cities in all of your discussions. We don't have much say, but there's actually more population in the county and all the small cities than there is in Bellingham. So please recognize that voice in your community. But thank you for coming to Linden. I appreciate you coming out and enjoy the community this evening.
Thank you. We'll now move on to public comment, and I'll ask Commissioner Ellenboss just to hang on to that so we can hand it off to anyone wishing to speak. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. If you have a comment on one of the agenda items for tonight that will be discussed in depth, those discussions that are listed under old business on the agenda, we ask that you hold your comments to until that time for the agenda item so that it's germane to the discussion. So those are going to include the proposed charter amendments to require the charter to review convener to determine rules for the initial meeting, to make the prosecuting attorney a nonpartisan office, to change the required number of referendum or public initiated charter amendment signatures to the percentage of votes cast in the last regular county executive election. And then finally, a resolution to the county council related to an independent legal review on violations of the charter and code. So we're going to start our public comments with general comments on topics not related to those things that I just mentioned. Staff, can you please read the names of those who have signed up in person?
Lisa Whale.
Hi, my name is Lisa Whale. I live in Bellingham. I want to start off by saying I appreciate you all taking the time out and serving these roles and working together. I know you come from varying backgrounds, and sometimes it's hard to be in the same room together. I appreciate that because this work is important for everyone in our county. And tonight, I want to speak regarding one of the new business items, and that is the proposal to go from 7 county council members to 5. I have some very strong feelings about that because I feel like having 7 creates more of a balance, creates more of opportunity for different voices to be heard. And when you have different people, some people feel more comfortable going to some council members, council members other than others. So it also helps divide the work because there's a lot of work to be done. We're seeing that battle going on with the port, going from 3 to 5. There's been some concerns with only 3, so I have some deep concerns about that. And I think it's something having all 7. No matter, because voting changes, we don't know who's going to be elected in the next election. It can change on a whim on what different voices are being heard due to the election cycle. But I feel that, I feel that the no matter what our belief systems are, that having 7 is going to be benefit to everyone in the county. Thank you.
Next is Cynthia Ripke, and I apologize, Cynthia, I cannot say your last name.
Thank you for making a reasonable accommodation. I do have some significant back and peripheral neuropathy, so I have to kind of hold on to things, and so it's going to take me a moment, but thank you. And I'm very grateful for these ladies here who helped me to explain to me the agenda for your meeting. I purposely came, although I belong to 9301, that is the Veterans of Foreign War and American Legion, and have served, every member of my family has served in every single branch. So I guess I want to thank the 11 people that didn't question having the Pledge of Allegiance. We are so grateful. We have a very difficult time getting Americanism and patriotism, not only that, but into our schools. And the American Creed is just this, which I've been everywhere, and it says something like this, that we are therefore believe in the duty to defend our country, to support the Constitution, obey its laws, respect the flag, and defend it. So we want to say thank you for those who actually set a pledge. A pledge is something that in the specter of communism, as you know, 45 points have already been accomplished in America, and it is one that remove all loyalty oath, this ubiquitous whatever, and I see very different minds here. I, interestingly enough, watched this again last night because I'm also interested in what may happen seismically in Washington. And at the end of this movie, the American flag has always been the unifying point of reference for our veterans. So it grieves me to look around this room and see people that wouldn't pledge the flag. You have a right And my family has stood there when they watched that flag burn, but I'm thanking for those who seem to understand in the service why. I'm leaving you some materials, you may peruse them or not. One was what Theodore Roosevelt said. We have room for one language in America, English we would hope, and loyal to its flag. An oath is something that it astounds me that people don't understand that. So I'm hoping you all do understand how that flag was forged, whether it be for our Star-Spangled Banner. You do realize that on that day, they were looking to see if that flag was raised over dead bodies so that they would see if this that fleet, those Americans would be released. So it was a broken heart that I heard, how could people not want to say the pledge? So I thank you for explaining me your rules of engagement here, so to speak. I'm leaving you some, just some material. And know at the end of this movie, I loved it, and I was right when I watched it. The flag flies, and after everything's been demolished by an earthquake and a tsunami, what's raised that everybody goes, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to get, hopefully, unified you people in this room with all these different thoughts in here about this review that you're doing. So I thank you, and I thank you for explaining. That's all I have to say about this. I'm going to leave you with a few things. And as I said, I am not representing 901. I'm just in passion, because I've also, if you go to Pearl Harbor, you will see a flag that's at half-mast. Thank you. Anybody else?
Next is Rosemary Van Beck.
Probably don't need this.
So this is for you to keep. I'm going to get out of the way. And this is for you to keep, please. And this is for you to
I can go ahead for time.
And this is for you.
After working in the legal field for 31 years in Mississippi and going back to school in the 1990s and getting my paralegal, when I married and moved to Washington, I decided I did not want to do that anymore. So I did not want to learn Washington law, had no aspect of ever doing that. But then my taxes started doubling. And that made me start researching. I started going to all the county council meetings, and I soon learned where all my tax money was going. And I was not happy with a lot of the places it was going. That is why I do feel that Section 2.12 needs to be modified to be fair to all residents of Whatcom County by deleting this Section B, nominee at large, because it has become apparent that Districts 1 and 2 are so compact that they have a better chance of gerrymandering this council. Gerrymandering has always been done, and it is one way of controlling elections. In fact, in the South, since the 1960s, redistricting has had to be federally approved just to change any kind of districts. So all I'm asking for is fair elections for everyone in the county to get equal representation. Now I'll move on to the ranked choice voting. On the fair vote side, it was discussed, and this type of voting has been done in Alaska. But I did note that Pierce County here had voted it in 2006, but with all the problems they had, and by the way, it cost $6.1 million, according to this site, for the equipment. They voted it out in 2009 with a vote of 70.65% to 29.35%. So we do want to know what the cost is and whether it's really going to benefit us. After watching the members last week, in the shameful age discrimination of Mr. Ellenboss, who is my district, y'all younger people do remember, we older people are not computer literate. We have a lot of trouble doing it, and if he needs some assistance, I'll try and help him, but I am not 100% computer literate. So I would like to make sure that y'all realize that all of us are not able to just get on the internet and search everything and find everything and get things presented. Thank you.
Madam Chair, those are all the people who signed up online. Thank you very much. In person, sorry.
Thank you. Are there any others who wish to speak in person today?
Councilman Sturmo, I'm going to put you on a timer.
Do it. 3 minutes. All right.
Do you want the mic?
Whatever. whatever you think. All right. My name is Mark Strumler. I'm a member of the Whatcom County Council and a citizen of Whatcom County. Thank you for your service, first of all. A lot of work goes into this, so thank you. 10 years from now, down the road, there might be some looking back at the current Charter Review Commission, and I wonder what people will, let's say, label this group as. I think that's kind of important. So I'm going to tell you what the past review commission has been labeled as by one of the commissioners here. And this is a letter to the county council, amongst others. It said, our past majority, wealthy member, and conservative-led elected Charter Review Commission. Wealthy member and conservative-led. That was how the commission was labeled as 10 years ago. I think that's unfair. To label a group of elected officials as that. So I would ask that if any of you are going to refer to a past commission, that you don't start labeling them as wealthy member or conservative-led. I don't think this group wants labels. I could think of some labels right now, but I'm not going to say them because that's not fair. So I would ask that if you have an inclination to do anything like that, to refrain. Okay? Second thing is, this is my citizen hat right now. I see there's an opportunity to consider 5 council members versus the current 7. If anybody can explain to me how much more fair 5 is than 7, I would like to hear it. You cannot get a more fair way of representation of 5 members, 1 from every district. And I'm still waiting for somebody to explain to me how 7 is more fair. But I'll let you guys work on that one tonight. So, I know this isn't a conversation. I understand that. But if anybody wants to address anything I've said here tonight, later on, you're more than welcome. So, that's all I have.
Will you buy them breakfast if a council member, if a commission member wants to get more information from you, will you buy them breakfast?
Sure, Joe, let's not go there. Everybody's got my phone number. Let's say that.
Now, are there any attendees who wish to speak who are joining us online?
There are 3. Jamie Douglas, Alan McConchy, and Joy Gilfillan. Jamie, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, it's actually Andronetta and Jamie Douglas, and this is Andy. I wanted to thank you for doing what you're doing, and I am very glad that you did stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance. We all feel patriotism and want to save our country at this point. I want to compliment the chair, Liz Darrow, for being very patient and fair in her ruling on this committee. I do want to say that the sound on this is a little bit murky. It would really help me if I could see the faces of the speakers rather than this stopwatch, because it really feels very irritating watching a stopwatch for 3 minutes, and that's the biggest thing on my screen. It takes up almost the entire screen. I don't see why the members of the audience have to watch the stopwatch rather than the people speaking. If you could correct that, would really help those of us who have some hearing problems. And I am in favor of keeping the 7 members, the 2 at large and the 5 regular ones, because there are many people who feel that they are not represented by the person in their district because there's so much partisanship right now. And it's good to have an at-large member that is responsible to the entire community. I think there's a great age range on this council. You've got Andrew Redding, who's like in the 70s, I think, and you've got Liz Young. So it's a good age group there. And I want to thank you all for doing your service to the community. Thank you.
Alan, please go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Hello. Hi, my name is Alan McConkie. I was born and raised here in Whatcom County. I currently reside in District 2. I'm also the co-founder of Fair Vote Washington. We're a nonpartisan group working on making our elections fairer and more secure to make sure everyone's voices are heard in our elections, which sounds like everyone here wants. I wanted to comment on the proposed change to the county council. I know you're not voting on it tonight, but I want to share some general thoughts because I assume that there's going to be some other proposals coming out, and I expect this is going to be a really core area that you're going to be working on. I appreciate that the text of this amendment includes some history on the topic. And just reading that, you can see how there has been a lot of back and forth over the years. Our county has tried so many options. We've tried different numbers of districts. We've tried all county-wide voting. We've said this mix of county-wide district-only voting with some at-large seats. We've redrawn the boundaries. I'm trying not to look at it too cynically. Like I think a lot of us might be thinking that these are political factions just trying to game the rules for a particular advantage. And I hope we don't keep getting stuck in that rut where each side thinks they can change the rules, and then next time around, well, the next commission might change it all again. If we look a little bit less cynically, though, I mean, this is a story of we're trying to figure out the best way to create a council that really represents all of us. I don't think anybody wants to be on the winning side where the other side has no voice. What we've tried so far apparently is not working. People remain unsatisfied. But we want to see a council where we all feel like we've got a council member or more than one who are fighting for us, who are looking out for us, and that all of our councilors can really work together and hash out their disagreements respectfully and find the right solution that is best for all of us, just like you're doing on the commission right now. I'm not really a big fan of our current plan. I think there's so much better we could be doing, and I see what this amendment is trying to do, trying to get an equal voice for everyone. I think the spirit of this proposal is good, but I think the 5 districts with district-only voting is still not going to be any more satisfying, and we're going to be back here again in 10 more years. I've lived out in the rural county. I've lived in the heart of Bellingham, and everywhere I've lived, I've had neighbors right next door with very different political views. We really can't expect one person for one district to represent everyone in that district. There are liberals who live in Farm County, there are conservatives in the city, and in our district-only voting plan, none of them really have a voice on the council. So I really encourage you all to take the time to look at a system of proportional representation for our county elections. There are a lot of great tried and true proportional voting methods out there that we could use where the seats are allocated according to the percentage of the vote fairly. And I'd be happy to meet with any of you to discuss how we could tailor a system for Whatcom County's unique needs. Thank you.
Joy, please go ahead.
Is this for Joy?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Joy Gilfillan from Bellingham, Ferndale, and all the other cities of Whatcom County because I have run for public office in this community a couple of times, doing deep research into how our community operates and how we can work with the inequities that exist across all ages, generations, and technical abilities. And I want to raise the a big thank you to all of you for hosting and being a member of this Charter Review Commission. We are, in my opinion, after 15 to 20 years of living here in Whatcom County, that we are in the eye of the storm. We are in the eye of the storm on a local, national, and international level because we live at the border of the United States. And we live on the only northern border that is not covered with snow at our main I-5 intersection, which means that we also are key to transportation that goes from Canada and Alaska clear down to the Mexico area, clear down through South America, and even down to the Antarctic. And the backbone of our planet actually runs through our community. So that puts us in a situation where we need to think larger than just our local issues. And we, in my opinion, we need to be thinking about whether we are taking actions with this Charter Commission, because the Charter Commission determines the economy of Whatcom County, whether or not we all understand that yet. I think that one of the biggest things that we need to do as a Charter Commission is actually look at the real cost of doing business in Whatcom County, the real cost of doing business in Washington State, and the real cost of doing business in our nation as a factor in thinking about what we're doing. Because it's not just cost of doing business, it's cost of living, it's cost of restorative or legal and jail and incarceration justice. It's the cost of emergency services. We actually need to separate our costs and our quality of life and our services, our public services. And the Whatcom County Charter, it only comes around once a year. And if we don't look at the real cost of what we're doing and the real benefit of what we're doing and the real price to public safety and emergency management, we're failing our citizens. So thank you all for being courageous enough to step up, walk into the middle of this. It is what I'm calling a snaggletooth dragon of sorts, because there are so many emotions and lives and careers and jobs on the line. And I just want to thank you all.
Thank you, Joy. Steph, is that all of the comments that you have?
Yes.
Okay.
That's enough.
Thanks, everyone, for giving your input. So we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes to approve. Both have red line changes from the first versions that were reviewed. Are there any questions or comments related to the minutes from either January 13th or January 27th? Commissioner Elmas.
Yes, in conversation with you and with staff and some of the membership, I've laid out items as it relates to our meeting minutes, the last ones, essentially as it relates to the motion to reconsider. And I would point out that a motion to reconsider, according to Roberts, is only appropriate in the meeting in which the motion you wish to reconsider has been passed. So that having been a previous meeting, it was inappropriate for a motion to reconsider that action at that time in the last meeting. And as a result, they're flowing from that motion to reconsider were 4 votes, 3 of which I think arguably violate our rules of order. And as a result, when our rules of order say, and if I can just remind the body, the motions that conflict, and I'm just going to read the whole sentence and you pull out of it what you feel is appropriate. Motions that conflict with the corporate charter, constitution, or bylaws of a society, or with the procedural rules prescribed by national, state, or local laws, are out of order. And in any motion of this, and if any motion of this kind is adopted, it is null and void. So it is my interpretation of our rules that since those actions were not appropriate, that is null and void. This does not say that anyone cannot at some point in tonight or in the future move to rescind that item, or they can move to amend something previously adopted. But the motion to reconsider was out of order, and if we want our rules to be complied with, and we wish to have our minutes be, as Robert says, a record of those actions appropriately taken, then we must strike those items. And so, as everyone then, so they're on the same page, what I'm talking about being out of order and inappropriate in our minutes would be the motion, the original motion, to move to reconsider the vote to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. That particular motion, since we can't do that according to Roberts, that particular item should not be reflected in our minutes. The next one, where Mr. Mutchler moved a substitute motion to recite the pledge, well, following that logically, if a motion to reconsider something we'd already done, and that was moved to recite the Pledge of Allegiance at each meeting, and it was duly passed, Mr. Mutchler's motion is a reiteration of that previous motion, and it too should not be listed in our minutes because it's a duplication of a motion previously adopted. The third item in there, the original motion to recite the oath of office rather than the Pledge of Allegiance, that was an actual motion, and it was duly before us. And so the vote related to that is in order for our rules. And then, of course, we go to the last item there, when without a motion in that meeting related to it, you announced that we will now vote on the motion to reconsider. And so that vote is, at best, it could be listed as a straw poll at the request of the chair. Where does the body stand on this? But it was not an item legitimately before us, and so it should not be in our minutes listed as a motion. Now, that's my position. I had a conversation with the attorney beforehand, and he indicated that he felt it was in order, and now I think I lost my place as to what I just read. But what I just read is what stands for us, and it stands for us in procedural matters. And so my motion at this point would be to amend the minutes as presented, removing those items that are contrary to the specifics of our rules, and list only that particular action, the one that was the motion to recite the oath of office, which did fail. And so then it's arguably, it may not need to be listed because it wasn't an action that was passed. If we want to take that strict interpretation, that whole section, all four of those votes, would be removed from our minutes because they either were not legitimate action or they don't fit the criteria of what's supposed to be listed in the minutes, that being those motions that were approved.
Thank you. For the record, could you please restate your motion?
I'm sorry?
Can you restate the motion?
I'm making, didn't I say that's what I was doing?
Yeah, can you restate what your motion is? I lost track, I'm sorry. I'm just asking you to restate the motions for the
Oh,
second.
okay. You are so soft-spoken. If you and I operated together on a regular basis, you'd be having to hit me with the gavel all the time because I would be missing what your intention is.
I would never, but thank you. I'll try to speak up.
Okay. And I'm not saying, you know, I don't have any problems with the way you treat me.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to have the motion correct for the record. So the motion is to amend the minutes as presented, to strike those items, and then can you just finish that thought so I have your motion correct?
To strike those items.
Which are?
I'm sorry?
To strike those items which are, what I understood you to say is that they're out of order. And I just want to make sure I have your motion correct so we can get a second
Okay.
discussion.
It is my recommendation that we take from the listing of under item 6, where it starts with Pledge of Allegiance, that we strike from that point to the end of number 6. None of that should be included in our minutes.
Do we have a second?
Ask you for a second.
I'll say
Commissioner Morales, I saw your hand.
Yeah, time for discussion on the motion. Should I use the
Yes.
microphone? Are you going to be able to hear me? Should I use the microphone?
Yes.
Great, okay. For discussion on the motion, I just wanted to mention that two things. I think there may be a style of recording minutes that you may have brought up, and I am a fan of thoroughly recording minutes so that when people go back, they know what occurred in a meeting. So I'll just say that. But I also think that if we're calling into question the validity of motions, my argument has been that the initial motion was actually out of order to say the pledge because it was made in the same meeting and voted on in the same meeting, and that is not in order with Robert's rules. It should have been noticed and properly noticed, and then we should have actually discussed and voted on it in the next meeting. So I just want to mention that I actually think that the original motion was out of order. Probably all the subsequent ones were as well. I want to honor what you're asking us to do here, but I also don't want us to get mired in the same thing over and over again. I think our community wants us to move on and deal with the business on our agenda. And so I would actually just say that I'm fine with us leaving what we've got and moving on. I'd love us to just have this in our minutes as our sort of bungled funny thing that we learned from and move on. I think it's in a way good to have a reflection of our process in our minutes, and that's why I'm a fan of just leaving it there. And I'm happy to pass the mic to anybody else who has a discussion or comment.
Commissioner Mutchler. Yeah, sorry.
So I would speak against the motion with all due respect. I have been in meetings 2, 3, 4 times a month for the last 15 years, and in retrospect, I can find things we've done incorrectly, that we have erred in procedures. But what I want our minutes to include are the actual choices that we've made here. Even if in retrospect we say, we didn't quite do that correctly. And I made that same statement last meeting that I thought some things were out of order. But that's what this body chose to do. And I think trying to unravel that, there could be a lot of unraveling. So I appreciate the parliamentary concerns that Commissioner Elmwas has. They're important. They're very important. But I want the minutes to record what we did, even if what we did in retrospect wasn't perfect. So I speak against it.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second to amend the minutes as presented to strike the motions under item 6 from January 27, 2025, from the phrase Pledge of Allegiance to the end of section 6. Staff, can you please call the roll? Amy Collins?
No.
Liz Farrow?
Yes.
Joe Ellenboss?
Yes.
Lindsey Graham Ellenboss?
No.
Colton Kaltenfeld?
No.
Greg Kelly?
No.
Maya Morales?
No.
John Mutchler?
No.
Anna Ordos?
No.
Bill Fitzjordan?
No.
Andrew Redding?
No.
Jessica Rinstra?
Yes.
Rod Stump?
No.
Jennifer Wright?
Yes.
And Doug Chadwick.
No.
That motion fails 11-4. Okay. Commissioner Mutchler.
I would move for the approval of, I move the approval of the minutes of January 13th.
Second.
For clarification, we can do both in one go, unless folks have other items on January 27th. So I'd love to give you an opportunity to.
It's already been seconded, but if nobody's going to object, I move the approval of both the minutes of January 13th and January 27th.
And I'll second.
Okay,
I'm going to ask just one question.
that's okay. Do you want the mic?
Sure. So, Ms. Morales, Commissioner Morales, you've said that we can't have a motion and vote on a motion in the same meeting, but that's what we're doing right now. I'm legitimately confused on that. So, if somebody could explain that to me, that's what we've been doing the whole time. You were saying that we're doing it wrong.
Yeah, I'm happy to clarify that. I don't mean all motions. There are different types of motions. And substantive motions are ones that in Robert's rules, if it is a new topic and it's actually a substantive motion that would change the course of a meeting or actually what we're dealing with legislatively, then that should be noticed in advance and on the agenda. But small little things like this, we obviously couldn't, we couldn't map out our entire meeting in advance, although I guess we could, but that would be kind of wild. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just was curious. Thanks.
Any objection to approving the minutes by consent? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Abstention.
Oh, and any abstentions?
Abstain. I abstain.
Okay.
I cannot, Madam Chair, point of personal privilege. I've lost my place. I pulled out my place as it relates to that. But I am here to ask this membership if we are willing to go ahead and violate the tenets of our rules at this point. Does that mean we're going to violate them whenever we want to? Because if anybody can argue with what I read you from our rules as it relates to improper motions, and we're just going to forget about it, I just need to know whether I need to gird my loins to come to a body that is constantly going to do what they want, or are they going to comply with the rules that they adopted. We all adopted this book and what it says, and we need to do that. That's my personal privilege to ask that, and maybe a rhetorical question, but you all need to think about that, each and every one of you.
I want to state briefly that Commissioner Ellenboss took a good amount of time going over this with me, and I did do some research on my own and also reached out to council. And I can certainly see the point being made here, and it's taken for sure. But the point that was made to me by council is once the body has voted and moved on, they have in some way accepted what that process that we did there that we all voted on. And we didn't call it out of order appropriately at the time. So as a relatively new person to this process, I appreciate the grace and I appreciate the time that you spent helping us to follow these rules that we've adopted. We have some administrative items. Upcoming meeting locations. So there's a question for the body on meeting locations beginning in April. We have our schedule for the next 3 meetings, which will be in Deming, Blaine, and Maple Falls. The staff is continuing to try to schedule a meeting at the Lumley Administrative Center, which was requested. We'll add that as soon as we can, once we get confirmation. So the question is for feedback on how to proceed beginning in April. So with the 4th meeting from now, do we want to go back to districts 1 and 2? Are there additional county locations where we haven't met from that list, accepting the elimination? Do we want to repeat locations? So that's the item for discussion. Obviously, any decision will require a motion and a vote, so I'm going to ask that someone from the body take that on.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think this falls under the category of an administrative item, but I'm not any smarter than anybody else in this group, probably not nearly as smart as many. But because I've served on this multiple times, I'm wondering when we're going to establish committees with which to refer these items to. And those smaller committees then have the ability to discuss and refine for the benefit of this body, do the research and so on related to it, so that it can then come before us, and they don't have to have a schedule that we all adopt. That particular committee can adopt it amongst themselves. But at some point, I would suggest that we do that, and we can set the procedure, or if the body agrees that you can appoint, or people just volunteer for the committees, but it's an important part of our process.
Appreciate that. I wonder if you would be amenable to bringing that up under new business?
You remind me.
I will. I wrote it down. Okay. In terms of how we proceed, does anyone have comments on that question? Beginning in April for meeting locations? Commissioner Wright?
I could go with any of things that have been planned. I would suggest and maybe move that we continue with new locations within the various districts, so we're not repeating locations, because it will allow more community members in more places to meet with us. So that's my reason for that. I think it's really important to hear community voice and have as many opportunities in different places for that as possible. So I move that we ask to consider rotating through the districts, but with different locations each time. Can I get a second? Or do we want to discuss more?
Second by Jordan.
Thank you. Definitely support the concept of continuing to rotate through and the districts. Would wonder if the good member from District 3 might be amenable to adding to the extent practicable to that motion, just to ensure that we are able to accommodate the fact that we may run out of new places to meet, that we are able to meet.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Morales?
I know. Getting the steps in. I like this idea of continuing to try new places. I think you may have just expressed this, but just making sure it's logistically doable for staff. But I also just want to raise just a question about whether doing a different location every time is a little bit inconsistent for the public possibly, or whether returning to the same spot within a district is better. So just putting that out there as a question. I actually don't know. I don't have a conclusion at all. But I would be very interested in public input on that as well. Yeah. Speaking as someone who represents District 3, which is the largest district, I think that if we host a meeting in Deming, for example, people from Sumas won't find that accessible. And there are good locations in Sumas or Everson, or Kendall where meetings could happen. So that's kind of the lens that I'm looking at it with, that it's not, the same location may not be good because everybody can't go there. Oh, Commissioner Chadwick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just recommend, again, if we're going to go back to districts 1 and 2, maybe one on the South Hill, Fairhaven, somewhere in there, and then you have the opportunity to pick up some people. Obviously, there's a portion of District 3 that actually runs down Chucknut Drive. A lot of people don't think of that as District 3, but it is. So those people could come up to potentially Fairhaven for a meeting. Same thing if there's a meeting in North Bellingham. Folks that live in and around Lummi Island, Lummi Nation, Ferndale can come to those meetings as well. So I think if you hold some of those meetings that are right on the borders, you're going to catch people from different, we have people represented from all different districts here today. So there's a group of folks that are going to follow us, and that's great. We love to hear from you. But we also want to hear from people in the various districts, because every district has their unique issues and things that are important to them.
Oh, no, I was just saying,
Oh.
we're out of order. Any further discussion? Okay. Oh, Commissioner Morales.
I'm sorry, can I just yell it instead of?
That's fine with me.
I would love if we're gonna change locations to make a request of staff, if I may. I don't know if that's a website request or a staff URL request, but just to be very clear about where each meeting is, in a way that you don't have to click the meeting to see the location. I don't know if that's possible or not, but just so it's easy for the public to see that it's in different locations and where they are, that would be my request. Because I'm not sure how we're communicating that to the public super clearly if it's not like on the radio or, I'm not sure how it's reaching people. So I just want to make sure it actually reaches the people where we're going.
We have a motion to continue to rotate charter review meetings through all 5 districts to allow for greater public participation. Sounds like pending the staff's ability to schedule those.
With new locations each time in different parts of those districts where practical.
We have a motion to continue to rotate charter review meetings through all 5 districts to allow for greater public participation with new locations each time in different parts of the district where practical.
I guess, and an amendment that they be very visible on the website.
I think that's a separate, I don't know, to me that feels like a separate request.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Any objection to approving this motion by unanimous consent? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Commissioner Morales, did you want to make a second motion regarding
I have a request that that's recorded in the minutes.
Staff request.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I just want that to be in our minutes, that, it be very clearly displayed and that the public is really invited to each location very clearly.
Okay.
On that note, I would say I strongly support that as well, and I wonder what more we could do to publicize and advertise what we are doing. I noticed Bellingham Metro News clearly told us where things were happening, and I appreciated that. I'd like to see it, robustly. So that's okay.
Okay. So our February meeting will take place in Deming. The charter section that we've identified. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ordos.
No, I was just going to speak to Commissioner Wright's point. In previous commissions, as I understand it, there was a PR person. And so who perhaps is an acting PR person, whether it's staff or if we need to select one. Commissioner Ellenboss may have more to add to that with his experience within the past, if that served the commission well to have that PR person or not. More comment or rhetorical question.
Was that I'm sorry, I didn't catch what she was saying. It's another very soft-spoken female.
Would you like me to repeat?
My wife doesn't talk to me in that quiet a voice.
Farmer Joe, what I had recommended is that my understanding in past commissions, there was a PR person for the commission. I don't know if all of them, you could answer that better than me.
If we're fortunate enough, I don't know whether those folks still exist in our society and the makeup of society. But typically what happens is someone who's new in the process or someone who wants to get their name before the public ends up approaching us. And they've never approached me, but they do approach the chair, and that way they can get presented to us. And they are beneficial because they understand how to get the word out much better than we do. And we can't expect the staff to do that because they're just assigned to us. They've got primary duties elsewhere. I mean, it's not fair for them to have to do it. I don't know, does that answer the question?
Yes. So if there is somebody in the community that's really excited about charter and they're they're watching us, they can approach the chair to be that PR person if we think that we
If they're real dynamic, they might outshadow us completely, and we won't be needed.
So our February 27th meeting will take place in Deming, and the charter section that we've identified to review is Title II on the legislative branch. We'll also hear from the auditor, Stacey Henthorn, and I know we have a lot of questions for her that we'll talk about a little later on. But do commissioners have invitations or requests specific to legislative branch that you'd like to put forward at this time?
Yeah, I would, if we're studying the legislative branch at the February 27th meeting, I'd love to hear from some either current or former county council members. Commissioner Marshall, I think you had a couple of great questions you proposed for the county executive about his perspective on the balance of power between the branches. I'd love to hear those same questions answered by, again, I guess I'll make a specific motion, but I don't have a strong preference on whether it makes more sense to have current council members or former. I suppose they might have slightly different perspectives. So I'll start it with, I'll move to invite two current council members. Ideally one representing, or each representing a different political party on the council.
I'd second that.
Discussion? Oh, this first.
I just wanted to say, I think it is non-partisan, so I would just make a note of that and just maybe be aware of inviting people representing very different viewpoints or something like that to come speak with us, just because not everyone represents a party, and some people consider themselves like in the middle, or so yeah. So that's my main point.
Are you moving to amend you want to offer a friendly amendment?
I would offer a friendly amendment to instead say representing different political perspectives. Sure. Or maybe different districts, or different, well, we could have at-large as well. Maybe we could do an at-large in a couple of districts. Whatever you all, how should I amend it?
We're going to be in District 3. It might make sense to invite the representative from District 3.
Okay, we could do that, District 3, and then an at-large, and someone else. Can you suggest someone, Colton?
I would assume the chair or their designated alternate.
Okay, the chair and designated alternate.
Seems like a pretty good.
So that's my amendment then.
Yeah. I was actually going to just bring up the point of nonpartisan positions, since it's a nonpartisan.
So do you accept?
Yes.
So my friendly amendment is we would bring the chair or representative, a person from District 3, and then somebody who's at large. Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Oh, Mr. Metzler?
I like what we're trying to do here is to involve the county council, the major legislative, and the only legislative branch of the county government here. And kind of maybe something easier. We had a council member speak to us today. What if we should go to do this, invite them all to come at their will, and they can have 5 minutes, speak to us on the charter, and that they're all 7 invited to come, and at their convenience. And we might get none, we might get 3, we might get 7, but maybe that's just simpler. Just to let them know they're invited to come. There'd be a time limit, and they might get questions from us too. So that might be an easier direction.
Commissioner Reddy?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Metzler. I prefer something that's open to all the members of the... Oh, Sorry, I agree with Commissioner Mutchler. I prefer something that invites any and all council members who have an interest in speaking, because some may not. And I don't want to be dragging people here who don't have a particular interest to do so. It would be best if we're hearing from the people who have things on their mind and would like to share it, but without distinction and without prejudice.
So help me understand, are you making suggested amended motion?
I think the motion is now amended, if you've accepted it, to invite all for a limited period of time.
Yes. Yeah, happy to accept that. That makes a lot of sense. I guess if I can offer a point of information too, I think there's some conference in Washington D.C. that a number of them are going to. So I think we get less than 7 anyway. That makes even more sense.
So the motion, as I understand it, is to invite all current council members to the February 27th meeting. Is that accurate? Okay. Commissioner Mitchell.
So that Commissioner Elmboss has to rebuke us with his loincloth next month. I will make that motion. Yeah, so I didn't make a motion.
Right.
I just made a suggestion. So I will.
Right.
Move to amend the main motion that the intent of council is to invite all, the intent of the commission is to invite all 7 council members, and that they would let staff know when they wish to come. They would have 5 minutes to address the commission on subjects related to the charter itself.
That's my amendment.
I was just imagining what if all 7 did come? I wonder if we could maybe modify that to 3, or do we? I don't want anybody to feel like they don't have enough time.
Okay. Anyway, Commissioner Redding?
I think that's very, very unlikely that all 7 would show up.
Well, I'm sorry, point of clarification. In your motion, you said when they were available, but we actually are discussing the 27th. So I think we have...
I don't mind when they come because they're busy, and I would just be happy to come. Even if it's off topic, it certainly doesn't trouble me at all.
Okay, so the amendment is quite a bit different than the original motion, so we need to deal with that, okay? So the amended motion, as I understand it, is to invite all council members when they are available, and at which time we would give them 5 minutes to speak regardless of when that is. We don't have a second on that motion just yet.
I'll second.
See Commissioner Kelly.
You want to have? No, you.
Very good. Okay. Then we're going to call the roll on that, please, staff.
Liz Farrow.
Yes.
Joe Ellenboss.
I'm still contemplating about my rebuke. If I rebuke anybody, they'll know it. I haven't rebuked anybody yet. Yes.
Lindsey Graham Ellenboss.
Yes.
Colton Altenfeld.
Yes.
Greg Kelly.
Yes.
Maya Morales.
Yes.
John Mutchler.
Yes.
Hannah Ordos.
Yes.
Joel Fitzjordan.
Yes.
Andrew Redding.
Yes.
Jessica Renstrom.
Yes.
Rod Stump, sorry.
Yes.
Jennifer Wright.
Yes.
Doug Chadwick.
Yes.
Amy Collins.
Yes.
And that amendment passes 15-0, and it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, we need to go back and...
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We're now voting on the original motion, which has now been amended. Is there any objection to passing that by consent? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. Moving on to amendments for consideration. The proposed amendments that we approved at our last meeting for discussion today. So as I mentioned previously, we're going to hear public comment, if any, that are specific to each proposed amendment. Sorry, excuse me, Commissioner.
Sorry, I'm not sure what kind of a point this is. Procedural? Wondering if we should schedule our break before we get into things, or when we do that, or how we do that. Just
the decision we made last.
Might I make an announcement related to that? I just saw that Rustlers, who is supplying us coffee for tonight, just brought it in, and my wife has graciously made cookies, even for those of you who are gluten-free. When she wanted me to carry the stuff to where it needed to be carried, she said it in a voice loud enough for me to hear, so I jumped to loud voice. She's a very gracious lady.
I appreciate input from both the commissioners. The decision we made at the last meeting is that the chair would make a suggestion when I think we're roughly halfway through and get the consent of the body. I do not think we're roughly halfway through, and so I was trying to give us a little bit more under our belt before we break. If that is okay with the body, I was thinking we would consider this first amendment, see how that goes, and perhaps have a cookie after. If that's okay with everyone here. But so appreciative of the cookie that is to come. First up for consideration is Commissioner Muchler's amendment to require the charter review convener to determine rules for the body for the initial charter review meeting. Staff, do we have any folks who would like to give public comment on this?
Who you got?
Commissioner
Are you
Elbas.
reserving open comments for the maker of the motion?
I am about to do that. We made the decision that we would offer public comment to anyone in person who would like to make comments. Seeing no one has signed up, is there anyone who'd like to make a comment on this amendment prior to discussion? Okay. And are there any commenters online? Great. Commissioner Muchler, would you like to speak to your amendment?
I have nicknamed this, we will save 1 month's worth of meetings amendment. And I'm maybe surprised we hadn't done this a long time ago, but I'm just going to read the amended part of the charter. It's on page 20 of the packet, and I think it's the most straightforward thing I can think of doing here. And if it's controversial, I'll be shocked. So at least every 10 years after the adoption of the charter, the county council shall cause an election of a charter review commission, hereinafter referred to as the commission. The commission shall consist of 15 persons, an equal number from each council district. There shall be no filing fee, nor shall it be a primary. The qualified voters of the respective districts shall vote only for candidates from their district at the general election. Candidates' names shall appear on all ballots as drawn by lot. And this is the important part. The member of the commission who receives the greatest number of votes shall convene the first commission, and up to this point, that is our charter. The additional sentences in red here, it says this: this commissioner, the person that got the most votes, shall determine the rules that will govern the first meeting of the commission until a permanent set of rules is adopted by the commission. And I make the motion that we approve this amendment, sending it to the voters in November.
Second.
I see Commissioner Collins. Go ahead.
I'll defer to others first.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I think this makes a lot of sense. I think usually when one's elected to a legislative body, you're joining a group that's already in progress, right? And not most of them are that there are rules and norms already, and making rules about how you're going to make rules, as we saw, is complicated. So thank you for this, yeah, I'll be doing this.
Commissioner Elbas?
Yes, Madam Chair. This is an item that is a distinct representation of what should be submitted to committee. John had a good idea, but it's not necessarily the best wording, and that's what we're looking for, is the wording that goes to the body. It's not consistent with anything that I know that when you have 15 members equally elected and have one member convenes it, that is okay, because there needs to be somebody that's titularly in charge to start the process. But that individual should in no way be the one that gives the edict of what the rules are. So just let me give you an example of how we could say this same thing in another matter, and where a committee might come up with this wording. I have no pride of authorship of this, but I think this is what it needs to say, something to this effect. This commissioner shall propose temporary operating rules for adoption by the body to facilitate the creation of the permanent organization. That conveys the same thing, but it gives the setup of how it's going to take place. And the body that is going to be what we're creating is the permanent body. That's what we did at that first meeting. Should have the authority to adopt those rules that the presiding individual proposes to them. If we had done that, every aspect of our first setup would have been unquestionable, okay? Still the same person that's making the proposal, but she's not, or he's not, telling us what we're going to do. They're presenting to us the opportunity to select and approve the rules by which we're going to undertake the action. And then we go on into the regular permanent organization. So I'm not making that as a substitute motion, but I do think that that's the type of language or something to that effect would be far more indicative and directive as to how this would take place.
Commissioner Jordan, Commissioner Wright?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to be asking for a yes vote on this particular motion, or this particular charter amendment. I want to thank the good member from District 5 for bringing it forward. It is definitely a glitch in the statute that led to some not necessary, some unnecessary confusion at the beginning, and I do believe that the amendment is a good little amendment that will make the job easier for the group that comes in 2034.
Thank you. I'm also speaking in favor. I think it's a wonderful idea brought forward by the member from District 5. And I actually prefer the wording brought forward by Commissioner Mutchler because I think it allows the person with the most votes to dictate the rules for the first meeting, but does allow for some conversation around which rules everyone wants to adopt. So I think it allows for more freedom, and I think freedom is something I'd like to reserve for future commissioners. So that's my take on it.
Further discussion? Commissioner Mutchler?
I will say, I'm not in favor of committees. I got enough committees. I've got 7 kids. My life's full of committees. But I did run this by our legal counsel, and we actually made some changes to make it more functional and more legit. So it wasn't all off the top of my head. I'd like to take credit for it, but it did receive help from our legal counsel.
Commissioner Nellis?
Thank you. I would agree that I think this is a really constructive motion. I think it is a gift to the future Charter Commission in that it clarifies, it's very clear, and it will allow things to proceed with efficiency and clarity, and I'm a big fan of that. So I am also in support of this motion, and I'd love to call the question if no one else has a comment.
Commissioner Chadwick? Could have just
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I appreciate what Commissioner Ellen Moss had to say, and I also appreciate Commissioner Mutchler for bringing this forward. I would hope that the convener of the next commission, and I'll be voting in support of this, but I hope that whoever that is, they establish the rules early in that meeting as they go forward. So that's my only point on that.
I'm going to agree with Joe on this because I think it's kind of vague because it says they're going to govern the first meeting with those rules, and it doesn't say it to what Commissioner Chadwick said that should have been addressed at the beginning. Joe brought that up at the beginning of that very first meeting. It got kind of wonky, right? Everybody remembers first times, but that should have been set right away, and then that would have alleviated that problem. That should be worded in here that until those rules are set until we set the next rules. Is that, sorry.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that is what it's saying, is that they'll determine the rules that will govern the first meeting until other rules are adopted. I do like the points that are made about getting that to people early on, maybe we could do some kind of friendly amendment like, and we'll notify the commissioners before the first meeting? I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I'm not ready to make a motion, but
Yeah.
we could do one.
What makes this clean, simple, functional, and helpful is that you might get the set of rules that the body desires in 15 minutes of the meeting start. It might take an extra meeting. If there's 3 sets of rules, we want to study them ahead of time. But you want to get started. You want to get functioning. So you need a set of rules, and I don't know of a better way to do it than that the convener of the meeting picking a set of rules. The commission might just study Robert's rules within 5 minutes of that, but I don't want to hamstring them in the future. And this is, to me, the most flexible way of trying to get something done that I think we all want to get the rules established. And the rules, we could change the rules tonight, what we're doing. They can be changed, but they need to get started. We had no rules when we started, and that was clearly a problem.
I'm going to pass the gavel just for a second because I want to speak to something that Commissioner Ellenboss has brought up, which is that in the spirit of deciding things as a body together, I think it makes a lot of sense for the convener, who could be anybody, to propose temporary operating rules for adoption. I really like the sound of that because we have worked ourselves into a way of 15 people who didn't know each other at all before, kind of learning our working style and beginning this process of deciding things together as a team. So I think that rather than the commissioner just setting the rules and putting them on the commission, that hasn't been the practice of the commission all the way back to 1978 from what I can find and read. And so if someone were willing to propose a friendly amendment, I think that that would do well to preserve the spirit of the commission itself. Let's see, Commissioner White.
So I'm willing to make a motion for that amendment that you're suggesting, although I wouldn't know how to restate it, so I have to rely on you.
I love what Commissioner Ellenboss
or
read. If
Joe.
you're willing to reread it.
To restate that.
What I read as a suggestion.
I only got a half down here, so please read it again.
I'll write it I'll write a copy for you guys as well. And it doesn't need to be these precise quotes, but these words. The concept of the body adopting the rules that are presented to us, I think, makes a much more cohesive situation, and that's why I worded it that way. The commissioner shall propose temporary operating rules for adoption by the body to facilitate the creation of the permanent body. And you could play around with that multiple times. That's why I suggested maybe this is an item where the chair asks for volunteers for a committee to come up with that wording to come before us. But that's up to you.
Okay, I'm not sure if this is what's been proposed or not, but it seems like an amendment to slightly alter this language is being made. So it would be the commissioner shall determine the temporary rules.
I have written what Mr. Ellenboss said. The commissioner shall propose temporary operating rules for adoption by the body to facilitate the creation of the permanent rules for the body. Really what it is giving the body the opportunity to agree to the rules. That's what I'm hearing.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to substitute that language. I've just made it.
Oh, okay.
Does it need a second?
Does it need a second
on that?
Does
Yes,
anyone,
we do need
I
a
have an
second.
objection to it, but I want to wait for a second and a second to hear.
One second.
So I just, if I may, sorry. I feel like part of the importance of this motion, of this amendment, is to allow the convener to set rules so that the meeting can begin. And the body does not waste time in that process, in that very initial process. And so I think that that actually changes the intention of the motion, of the amendment, sufficient that it wouldn't even be a friendly amendment. So I think that it's important to actually vote on what is before us, because that amendment would completely change the nature of this submitted amendment as it is. So I'm not sure what we're going to do with that as a body. Do you have additional?
One second.
I would just agree with Commissioner Morales. I think there's a precedent and a history with the group together considering the different kinds of rules that there are that they want to adopt. And I think the way that Commissioner Muchler has written it will allow the commission to get off on a productive start, but also allow that conversation about like what rules do they want to be governed under, and not feel pressure to pick a particular set of rules right from the beginning that is decided by one person. So to me, that strikes a nice balance.
Sorry, I couldn't see you. Sorry.
As I was listening to the amendment read, if I heard it correctly, it seems like you've now created two rule-setting events 10 years from now. And they're going to curse us for doing that, by the way. So you're going to debate whether the temporary rules presented by the chair, because he or she can't just use them. He now has to go through a process with this commission to decide whether they want them. And they're called temporary. That means somewhere later in the meeting or in the month, then you do the second round of going through the rules again. So we've escalated the rules into two events. And let's keep it simple. They're going to curse us in 10 years.
And just to clarify, what I hear Commissioner Morales saying is that motion was out of order. And given your explanation, I would agree. So I just want to clarify that what we're going to vote on is the original motion, and then should someone want to amend they're going to need to do that after. Commissioner Polka.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've heard a lot of diverse perspectives on this, and I think we've all had an opportunity to kind of consider a couple of the pros and cons of the word here and a couple alternatives. I would like to think that we're at a point now where I could call the question and kind of just see where people are at on this. So I would entertain a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Requires a vote on its own.
Yes, heard. But we don't have to call the roll on that, right? Can we do it by consent? Okay. Are there any opposed to approving by unanimous consent? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Would you hold that mic to your mouth when
Yes.
you say that?
We have two so far opposed, Commissioner Ellenboss and Chadwick. Any others opposed to approving? To call the question. Thank you. And any abstentions? That vote passes 13-2. We're now moving on to calling the roll on approval of amendment proposal 2025.1.10-2. And this is the amendment on charter review and amendments election and period office. Staff, will you please call the roll?
Joe Ellenboss.
No. Did you say Joe or Lindsay?
With you.
Joe,
Yes.
no.
Okay.
I'm
Lindsey Graham
opposed.
Ellenboss. No. Colton Felt.
Yes.
Brad Kelly.
Yes.
Maya Morales.
Yes.
John Muchler.
Yes.
Hannah Ordos.
Yes.
Joel Fitzjordan.
Yes.
Andrew Redding.
Yes.
Jessica Renstrup.
Yes.
Rod Stump.
No.
Jennifer Wright.
Yes.
Doug Chadwick.
I changed to no, which was what my last vote was supposed to be.
Oh, I see.
Amy Collins.
Yes.
Liz Darrow.
Yes.
Needs 10.
That amendment passes 11-4. And just to clarify, Commissioner Chadwick, do you want your vote changed on the calling the question from a no to a yes?
Yeah, I thought we were voting on the amendment.
I hear that, yeah, we're moving it quickly through this, okay. I'd like to suggest a cookie break, if it's the will of the body. Is there anyone opposed to taking a 10-minute break? We'll reconvene here at 7:35.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. Okay.
I'm going to call the meeting back to order at 7:43. If you would please find your seat, we'll continue with the meeting. Calling the meeting back to order. Our second. Thank you, everyone. We're going to continue on now. Our second proposed amendment is also from Commissioner Munchler. Make the prosecuting attorney a nonpartisan office. Staff, are there any people present who would like to comment on this item?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you so much. Oh, you're all right. I'm following. Oh, thank you. Yes. This is the amendment. Do I have the right one? Did I put the right one down? That was considering the nonpartisan position?
That's correct.
Okay. And could you read the whole? I have something very different here. I don't know what that is. Could you read that to me, please? It was yours? What is the amendment? I mean, in total, the paragraph.
Make the prosecuting attorney a nonpartisan office.
Okay, say that. Okay. So, I thank you very much for the courtesy of having the public speak. And I do want to thank you because I am with the mayor. I happen to live in Linden. I don't come from Linden, but my daughter's EMT paramedic in the county, captain out there in Kendall. And that's where my heart is for these towns that get little recognition: Sumas, Nooksack, Everson. And I see some people in this room, which you don't really realize what those people are still going through after that massive flood, and very little done to help them. So I hope you do remember what he said. It saddens my heart that wasn't, I'm not for a lot of the expenditures of money that the county does. I no longer do go to the council meetings. I figure, that's why I'm here on speaking my piece. I figure when you walk in this room, you usually can tell exactly who's bringing a mindset, my undergraduate sociology, who's bringing a mindset to that meeting that's already set. So I'm hoping this might be a little different. I no longer go to the county council meetings because I know, like the other night, who's going to vote what. It's just like a waste of my gas and time. I will drive out to Demi No, and I'll tell you, those people, they may not show up a lot. They pay attention, but they're your blue-collar, working class. I'm reading J.D. Vance's book, the people that get no really recognition. They don't even have a senior place in Sumas. I'd moved there on a dime out of Linden. So I'm hoping you don't forget them. So it doesn't really matter to me, honestly. I don't see anything in this state or anything in this county, really. It's kind of ludicrous, including the sheriff's office is nonpartisan. You're bringing a whole set of value systems with you, and it's always right off the bat easy to see who's on kind of what side, and maybe you might be able to reason. The Bible says let's reason together. So I don't particularly care whatever that position may be, because a person's going to vote like they do on the council, the way they do. You can call it a nonpartisan position. But I'm thinking, I'm standing up here tonight, I'm giving just accolades because of the people that matter to me. Tasha, who you were out in the county, and I would say Ashley, people are helping those people. So I didn't really ask what politicking they were. I'm more considered, what is your value system? It tells me a lot when you pledge for a flag. It tells me a lot when you get out and do something, what side of your arm? So I'm thankful tonight that I got to see people from Be Strong, Be Brave here, including you, Missy, who stands up. Usually we're always on the other side of it. So whatever you want to do with that, have at it. And I do want to thank you. You've been all very polite. And my birthday is on George Washington. You ought to, before you make any decision, read some of his paper and viewpoints. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Goodbye.
Brewer.
Good evening. Sandy Brewer, District 4. I want to speak in favor of this amendment. It seems awfully strange that everybody who's elected in this county is nonpartisan except for the county prosecutor. And yet he deals with the judiciary, the judges, and they are nonpartisan. So what difference does it make what party supports that position? Actually, I think I'm safe in saying that both parties support that position. If anything should be neutral in party politics, it's your party, it's your county prosecutor. So I'm speaking in favor of this amendment. There's no reason that it should be a partisan position. And in fact, I've read at least one written opinion by our previous State Attorney General that says there's no requirement for it to be partisan. Thank you for your time.
Madam Chair, those are all the commenters on this amendment.
Okay. Are there any online commenters?
There are not.
Okay. Commissioner Mutchler, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Thank you. This is on. I didn't break the testimony.
I think it's a battery issue. My view on it is that you should make them all partisan or all nonpartisan. Because we run elections the odd years are the countywide elections. And the even years are the statewide and national elections. And when we run the odd years, I don't think there's a single partisan race on there except the prosecutor. I want to think that that prosecutor is going to represent me whether I'm a Democrat or Republican. So my view is if you're against the prosecutor being nonpartisan, then I would expect you next month to bring in an amendment that all of them are partisan. I don't think we want to do that. So I also want you to know that the prosecutor here is on the line. If we had questions, did he want to actually speak? Is that okay with the chair, that Prosecutor Richard speak?
I think he can have 3 minutes of public comment, even though we moved past that, but
sure.
Not knowing he was here.
So he's here, and if we want to give him more time, we could ask him. So ask the chair for that. Mr. Ritchie.
Yeah, thank you. So I am here, and I thank you all for the work that you're doing here. I don't have a whole lot more to add than what I already wrote and what's been said here already tonight. But I am here and available for any questions that you might have. Again, I thank you all, and I appreciate that Mr. Mutchler has presented this issue to this commission. That's all I have.
Okay.
Can we ask some questions?
Sure.
Or do we need to second the motion first? And then
Well, we have a motion on the floor. I think we do need a second. I mean, if the motion from the packet, I guess, satisfies the body that is a motion made by Mr. Mutchler.
Yeah, the packet has my motion. I move that we adopt the motion as presented in the packet to make the prosecuting attorney a nonpartisan Whatcom County position.
I'll second the motion. Go ahead, Commissioner Ellenboss. Did you have something you wanted to say?
I just thought we could ask questions if we had them, because it was a very brief letter from him to us, why they're requesting it, and I have some curious, I've asked around a lot, haven't gotten any definitive answers, and I wanted to know from him what, if what, having served in this office for so long, had it been nonpartisan, how would that have changed things? What situations have arisen that made him think that it should be nonpartisan? I just want to hear more in depth.
So that's a great question, and I'm certainly willing to answer any and all. But what I have to say about this, I wouldn't have done anything different. But it's the perception that's in the community, and that's something that is not necessary. As the person who was commenting earlier talked about, the prosecutor should be for everyone, not just for a particular party. It should be. I mean, the prosecutor needs to be impartial completely. And anyway, just for that, I don't think there's anything that I would have done differently. It's just that it's about perceptions.
Commissioner Redding?
Yeah, I want to make, do I need? Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend, and specifically to add language saying that this would take effect on the next regular cycle. In other words, the next regular election for the position, but not before that. Do you consider that a friendly amendment?
I don't know if that be necessary. This next election is an odd year, so it won't take effect for this one because the one already passed.
I believe the next regular election is 2026 for that position.
Well, this would be a 25 or a 27, right?
Pardon me?
This particular office, it's a county-wide office, it will be a 25 or a 27.
Well, we can ask Eric Ritchie when the next election is.
You would know. And this vote on this is in this current year. So.
Yeah, the only thing, that's to make sure that the full cycle of that 4 years is under the current setup, and it only would take effect with the next regular election. In other words, this would not apply if there was a resignation, for instance. Okay? That's what I'm trying to do here.
So, I think this might be against the current terms of the charter. This is something that you may want to ask your legal counsel about. I'm not sure that that's an appropriate amendment. But my next election would be in 26 for 27 to take office in 27.
So you run in an even number year? You do run in the even numbers?
Yes.
As a partisan person? So
yes. That
raises the question whether this should be with all the other countywide offices. I hadn't thought about that. Had you?
I'm sorry, is that a question? I may have missed that.
So all of the Whatcom County offices run in an odd year. 25 this year, and then 27, 29. But you're saying that you run in the even number of years?
Yes.
So do you want to keep it that way?
It's a state office. I mean, and I'm with the judges, and anyway, yeah, like I said, be 26 and taking office in 27.
Thank you for clarifying that. You are correct. The judges run nonpartisan, and this would be similar to them, but it would be in an even year.
I'm not sure if that motion to amend needs a second, but I would second it if it does.
And I think the clarifying question there being for council, if stipulating when a thing goes into effect is, I think I heard Mr. Ritchie say that was against the charter, so I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, I think that, again, I think that may not be allowed under the charter to say that it's, we're going to make a decision and delay it for a later date. Again, I think that this is something that you should ask your legal counsel, Mr. Kustra, and if he doesn't know the answer today, I'm sure he could provide that answer for you later.
Since I'm here as Mr. Ritchie's deputy, far be it for me to argue with him here, but I don't know the answer for certain that there's a prohibition on delayed inaction or enacting something that would only take effect on a general rather than a special election. I would have to do more research on that.
Commissioner, I've been having Can I comment? So I just want to say I'm in favor of this with this amendment to apply it to the next election. And I will say that deliberative legislative bodies certainly can choose effective dates. That is not prohibited at all. And it's perfectly acceptable to bring forward a proposal that has a particular effective date. The same thing would be true if we were changing districts or adopting ranked choice voting. There's no difference there. So just to clarify, it's perfectly legal for us to choose an effective date. And so to say, the language wouldn't be to delay it. The language would be that this would commence beginning the election of blah, blah, blah. So just to clarify.
Commissioner Wright.
Just kind of along those lines, if it was going to be stated that there was any kind of prohibition, I would want to see exactly where that conclusion was drawn from and have specific examples, because my interpretation and understanding aligns with Commissioner Morales. So,
Commissioner Muchlerks.
So if I understand things correctly, if this is passed by this commission, it would be brought to the voters in November. This is 2025, and assuming they approve it, the next time the prosecuting attorney is up for election is 2026. So it seems like the timing is almost ideal, and that you've got the next election will have taken effect. So I don't know why more is that needed to be added to that.
Because I'm saying the next regular election, okay? If the prosecutor were to resign, for instance, and there has been talk about that.
Commissioner Redding, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
just having it pointed out that we want to have, as our rules to be adopted, people who haven't spoken yet to the motion speak before another person speaks second time. I understand you're responding. We also have someone who's let me know that they've had their hand raised online. I don't know if we're allowing people to do public comment in that way, but just want to let you know that that exists. But Commissioner Alamos, go ahead.
I was going to speak to what Mr. Redding was saying, that we're talking about the next election, but there's other scenarios that could take place, including if something happened to Mr. Ritchie, if he resigned, and there's processes that are directly tied to whether that position is partisan or nonpartisan, and we need to be cognizant of that, so we might not be ready for this.
Commissioner Kelly.
I have a question for Mr. Ritchie. Yes, Commissioner Kelly, District 4. Mr. Ritchie, can you claim, or Mark, if you were to file for office and it was partisan, can you do that as independent?
Yes.
So you wouldn't need to state a party?
Right, you can claim independence, but it is a partisan party by law. Partisan position.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, in concept, I support the idea of having our prosecutor nonpartisan with the other elected officials. I think it does speak to, being transparent and trying to appeal to a wider population. And I've had the opportunity to talk to Prosecutor Ritchie. I've actually had the opportunity to talk to former prosecutor McEachern, and who apparently years ago proposed a very similar thing. And it shouldn't be partisan. It shouldn't be tied to party politics. And but I think for clarification, the scenarios we're bringing up where there's a resignation, I think what's important to consider is in the interim, when there's a vacancy, there's different things that happen when it's partisan versus nonpartisan. Currently, it's a state office. It's governed by state law, general law, and if our prosecutor was to become, he left his office, his position would be appointed by the county council, but it would be somebody from the Democratic Party. If it was nonpartisan, it would be appointed by the county council, regardless of partisanship. Now, the other thing to consider is if it remains partisan, and say hypothetically this county moved to ranked choice voting, and it remained partisan, my understanding in state law is there would still have to be a primary for a prosecutor. Maybe our legal Beagle here in the room can speak to that.
It's another one I'll have to research.
Okay. Again, this may be, I think we're kind of getting down in the weeds on this one. As Commissioner Ellenboss suggested, maybe this is a good topic to go to a committee and do a little more research and look into it. The difference between the charter and state law as it, because again, it is a state office. Prosecutors is supposed to remain independent for that very reason, so that it's not influenced by outside forces and politics.
Commissioner Colton-Bell.
Thank you so much, Chair Darrow. Yeah, I'm going to, in general, I am in favor of this. I mean, I think we're at a time now where there's a lot of worry about our justice system being used in partisan ways, and this is a great step in the right direction. I would be in favor of Commissioner Redding's proposal to have this trigger at the next election. You know, I think it's good governance to not change the nature of an office that people have already elected on during that cycle. Primarily, what I was looking to make there, need to bring it to a committee. I suppose I'd be in favor of that, or if there's still some legal questions to be considered here, especially I know the prosecutor is a very unique position with how much is controlled by the Constitution, so maybe a good idea.
Seeing Commissioner Redding, just want to make sure we haven't missed anyone who wants to speak to it. Oh. Right.
Madam Chair.
Hasn't spoken to it.
Madam Chair, may I respond briefly?
Okay.
It's Eric Ritchie. I'm still online here. I wanted to correct my earlier answer. I was mistaken. I found the part in the charter that talks about it, and it looks like under section 8.20 that the charter amendment can be made as Commissioner Redding suggested.
Okay. Mr. Snow.
I'm going to disagree with this one because I think, yeah, in a perfect world, the prosecuting attorney should be nonpartisan, the sheriff should be nonpartisan, but as we see, they're not, right? When the governor got elected, he's a Democrat, right? And how their views reflect how they view the Constitution, our constitutional rights, and how they interpret things. So I think it should be transparent, and I think everybody should know where they're coming from. And I disagree with this one.
Commissioner Redding.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that there's a constitutional issue involved as well in this one, because the Constitution specifies that when it's a partisan elected office, any replacement that occurs during that term needs to be, as Commissioner Chadwick pointed out, needs to be through the local party, whichever one it is, gets to nominate 3 people from which the county council makes the choice. Now, back in 2022, the voters voted for a 4-year cycle. That goes till 2026, and that was on the Democratic ticket. So I'm sympathetic with making this nonpartisan, but not if it happens in midstream on that. We need to respect that constitutional provision, and that can be done in a way where if you do it with effective date being the next regular election in 2026.
Mr. Matschler.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten that deep into the woods, but we call this transition language. We had it 10 years ago when we went from 3 to 5 districts and term limits, and I think we could ask staff to provide the transition language. I'm getting an impression that the majority of the body is in favor of this direction, but the transition language needs to be really spelled out very clearly. I also wanted to address Commissioner Stump's the thought that these are partisan, in a sense, that's true, and parties endorse candidates all the time. And it's so easy to find that with the internet now. So I think there is full transparency. If a candidate tends to be supported by one party or the other, it's not hard to find that out. So if that's important to people, they can figure those things out. So anyway, I would suggest that this be brought back with the transition language in front of us so we can get our heads wrapped around what that looks like in terms of this current period of time and the next period of time.
I will say we have a motion to amend on the floor, and we have a main motion on the floor, so I'm not sure that we can proceed with that since you're striking your original motion. But I do see Commissioner Winston.
Thank you, Chair. Listening to everybody's input, I've really appreciated hearing the points of view, and I've gone back and forth on this, thinking about it. I feel similarly to Commissioner Stump, where I think it's fair for voters to understand coming in who they're voting for and what potentially those core values may or may not align with them. And I definitely hear you, Commissioner Muchler, that this is something that if somebody wants to go on the internet and find out, they can. But as we've already discussed in our session today, the internet is not necessarily fully accessible to every single voter. And I definitely believe in the intelligence and the resourcefulness of each voter, but I also would like to make things as straightforward and transparent as possible. And so that is why I'm leaning towards a no on this. Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion to amend to add language to this amendment proposal to say that the effective date would be after the next prosecutor election, regular prosecutor election. Mr. Elmos.
I'm going to be consistent with my stand from 1977 and all of the charter review commissions that have taken place since. I have repeatedly taken the stand because I come from the day, there's some others here who do as well, when the Democrats were far more conservative than the Republicans are today. And so that title is a helpful thing to voters to know something about the candidate. It's from whence they come. It's not how they vote or how they operate. Any Democrat legislator will tell you they represent the Republicans. A Republican legislator will tell you the same thing about representing the Democrats. I've always felt office positions should be partisan, that your yeas be yea and your nays nay. And you need to be identified that way. That does not in any way, shape, or form, should not in any way denigrate a situation where a Democrat can't publicly service well, nor a Republican. So for that reason, I will vote no on this particular proposed amendment because I believe that all of the offices should be partisan. Thank you.
Since I don't feel like we're ready to vote on a motion, I'm going to move this item be, I don't like the word table, postponed, brought back at a future date with the transitional language provided that we have things start at the next election, after the election, to make the amendment be effective. So at 26.
Okay. That's a motion just to...
Point of clarification, I believe you have to withdraw your original motion, or we need to vote through these two motions that are currently in front of us, because we do have a motion and a second on the language to amend.
A motion to move something to a future date supersedes any other motion. It was the amendment.
I was going to say that motion is going to a certain time as a subsidiary motion because you may involve something that's on the table to delay the vote to a particular meeting to discuss it further.
I just learned that. Thank you both. Okay, so we have a motion to delay. Can you receive the motion, please?
It's to delay a vote on this until we have all the language pertaining to the trend.
This is a motion to delay this vote until we have the amendment in front of us that includes the transition language dealing with the various issues that we talked about here that aren't clear.
So is that laying it on the table to a time certain? Is that the motion? That's the only proper motion.
That's what it is.
Okay.
And what is that time certain?
Let's just say a month, the next 2 meetings from now.
March 13th.
That should be.
Okay. So we have a motion to delay a vote on this motion until March 13th to allow time to develop transition language to add to the amendment. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Need a second on that motion?
Second.
Need not be a roll call. Doesn't need to be a roll call.
Is there any objection to deciding this by consent? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Another point of clarification, you mentioned a committee. Are you asking for
No,
volunteers?
no committees. No, that's what staff is for.
Okay.
That's-
Sure, there wasn't a second. Not going to.
Yes, Jennifer Wright.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
I'm pretty sure staff.
Okay, our final proposed amendment is by Commissioner Redding to change the required number of signatures for a referendum or public-led charter amendment to a percentage of votes cast at the last regular county executive election. Staff, if there are names of any in-person commenters, could you please read them?
There are not.
Is there anyone else in person who would like to comment? Oh, she was first? Okay.
I just want to know what the numbers are. I mean, how do you find out the numbers?
I'll be speaking to that.
Okay.
I'd like to speak against this. For many decades, I've collected a ton of signatures for referendums and initiatives, and it's a pain in the neck. However, I do believe that it serves a useful purpose in that it is a gatekeeper, and we want to have it be a little bit of a pain in the neck so that we don't get a flood, because this is a way to change laws, and we want to be careful about that. I'm glad it's there. So, but I'm not for making it too easy. Because it needs to go through a process, some bonds take 2/3, some votes take 2/3. And we want to have a sufficient number to kind of, screen out the ones that shouldn't be there. Then I just come down to cost. Every time we put something on that ballot, and if you double, triple the number of referendums initiatives, it's going to be more expensive. So for those reasons, I would say, no, let's keep it there.
Oh. Hi, my name is Ashley Button-Jones, and I actually worked on the last initiative that we had here in Whatcom County, and I'd like to speak against and ask that you vote against. I think the threshold is where it should be for both the referendum and the initiative. I think that we want a threshold that's high enough to protect us from things that should not be on the ballot. Lowering the threshold puts us at risk. As we know, not always are things explained well to the people. So I think it's important that we keep the threshold where it is. I also ask that this body consider writing a letter or coming up with a statement and speaking to our state legislator, because really if you want to protect our rights to have an initiative, our rights are being held at risk at the state legislature right now as they are trying to impose further regulations upon collecting signatures on the referendums and initiatives. So if you want to protect it, that would be a great way of going about it. I also ask that you protect the people's right to legislate to the fourth branch of government from our county council being able to attack us and take a position before it's gone to the ballot. Thank you.
Seeing no other commenters, are there any commenters online?
They're not sure, Darrell, and I will just say that protocol for council is not to call on people who've raised their hands but not registered, so we are not allowed to do that. Okay. But they're welcome to email you all, as you know, at charter at blah, blah, blah. And they can also come to the next meeting.
Okay.
And just a point of clarification, if the individual spoke in public comment earlier, would they need to have registered for both places in the agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
It is confusing. It's an unusual system that we have here. We may want to change it if you guys don't like it, but yes is the answer.
Will there be a public comment available for the resolution? That's not something that we've addressed, it's not out of the norm, so I'm just wondering if that's something that would be open for.
It is.
Okay.
People were allowed to sign up for that.
Okay.
Commissioner Ordonez.
Would we consider making an exception because of the lack of clarity around having to sign up for 2 different or potentially 3 or 4 different public comments for those that are online that may not have understood that? Do I need to make
Commissioner Morales?
I'm sorry, respectfully, I'm so sorry. I did not listen to your full comment, and it might have been the same as mine, which was my concern is that I think we agreed as a body that it was okay to accept comments in person who were there for that particular agenda item. Is that what you said, Commissioner Ordonez? I'm sorry if I...
Not entirely, but I think what... Go ahead.
But I think the sentiment's the same. I don't think that we made that same concession for online, but we probably should have.
Yes, agreed.
I think the clarification is for security. People are required to register online if they're going to make a comment because there have been some issues in other bodies, not this one, with Zoom commenters. However, I'm in agreement with Commissioner Ordos and Commissioner Morales that I didn't know that, and the person who reached out to me had earlier commented, so I know that she registered. So I guess I would just ask the body to consider for this one time, even though I know that time is precious to all of us, that we allow for comment by a raised hand for this item, if there are any, knowing that we moved through the last one with a hand up, and that's just a matter of not understanding the process, if that makes sense. So if we do have hands raised for this item specifically, I would appreciate if we could give them some time to speak. 3 minutes, max. No, I'm just asking as a courtesy to the public. I did see Commissioner Muchler's hand up, so maybe as you sort that out, we can hear from Commissioner Muchler.
I just have a question or two about, this is a helpful document that we were given, I'm assuming by staff, or maybe by a commissioner, that has a little bit of the history of charter amendments, referendums, initiatives, mini initiatives. And I'm just, if I understand this correctly, we have never had, since we had our charter adopted some 50 years ago, we've never had an amendment brought to us through the signature process, it looks like. And then we've had it happen twice with referendums, once in 92 and once in 90. And then the initiative one was last year, 2024. What was that initiative?
That was the one that Ashley Blumenthal was involved with, yeah.
But it never got to the ballot, did it?
The vote, there was enough count of signatures, but our county council voted it down.
I understand. It never got to the.
So it's a legal challenge right now.
So it doesn't happen very often, is what I'm saying. It appears the initiatives process. We have 2024. It didn't get to the voters, but the signatures are captured. Is that the 8,900 signatures? What was the one previous to? Does anybody know? How often does this happen? That initiatives or referendums or amendments are brought by the voters or by signature? I simply don't know. Because it leads us to ask: is the threshold too high? You know, it should be difficult. I agree with some of the speakers that it should be difficult, but is it impossible? Just wondering.
Did you want to respond to that?
Do we respond? How do we do this? I just want to make sure we had a request to ask.
Point of order, normally the proposer is the one who speaks first on these things, and that's what happened with Commissioner Muchler, so we're breaking
we have yet to
the rules
And
here.
I appreciate your patience. We had a little bit of an unorthodox thing go on, and so I'd love to hear you speak to your motion, and then if we do have anyone come, with their hand raised online, I'd love to give them that perspective. It's the will of the body, and then we will proceed as usual. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, what happened here was Commissioner Muchler, in a very helpful way, asked last time for information from the auditor, and then I joined in with him on that, and we got a lot of research done by the auditor, which is summarized in this. to make it kind of easy to see the relationships here. And the things I would like to call out to you, and Commissioner Mutchler has pointed a lot of that out. It is true we've never had a charter amendment in the whole time from the public, and there's a reason for that if you look at the numbers. Okay, if you look at the fact that it requires 20,468 valid signatures, and as the auditor points out, you generally need 25% more than that in the way of signatures to get that many valid ones, so that would be over 25,000. And the maximum number of validated signatures ever collected in this county was 8,890. So not a snowball's chance of ever getting there. Now the charter says that is one of the 3 ways that you can amend the charter, but it's only in print if there's no way to actually do it de facto, right? It means that it says so, but there's no way to get there, and nobody's tried because they all know there's no way to get that many signatures here, I can assure you. As somebody who's done the signature process, just like, yeah. So that is why we've never had it, I'm trying to point out. And when it comes to referendums, look, the only time we had referendums was a long time ago, and why is that? Because we couldn't get the number of signatures required today. Now, why has that gone up? Because the turnout at gubernatorial elections has soared in the meantime. And so as that, you're taking the same percentage, right, of a much, much bigger figure, and it has escaped the amount that's possible to actually raise. Now, I'm bringing this up in a very nonpartisan way. If I were bringing this up in a partisan way, I wouldn't want to have this reduced, because think about it. The majority on the county council is Democrat, and I suspect it'll continue being that way, honestly, if we're very honest with ourselves. And I sympathize with those who feel that wrests some power from them, right? Well, the one thing that's left, if you don't like a piece of legislation from the county council passed by the majority, is to be able to do a referendum. But if you can't get enough signatures to do that, well, in effect, you don't have that power, right? So referendums are only used to challenge legislation that has been passed by a legislature. That's the only use for that. So this is being offered as a benefit to the other side primarily. From our side, great to not have any challenges to our legislative actions.
You might know something we don't know. Might be political.
No, I'm not doing that, but I do believe in public sovereignty and the rights of the citizens ultimately to be in charge. And I have seen all across the country where the citizens have defied sometimes both parties, right? When it comes direct from the public. We've seen those situations where, for instance, in red states, there have been, whenever there's a minimum wage increase thing on the ballot, boy, they sure do vote for that. And so there's a lot of these things that go both ways, right? And where it doesn't necessarily go the way the parties want it. We had a charter amendment that was put on the ballot in November by a majority of both parties, to be sure, but the Republican Party said vote no on that, and so did Senator Sharon Shoemake on the Democratic side. But majorities of both Republicans and Democrats and independents all voted for it, so it passed by 84%. So I do believe in the public being first on these things, and they can't be first if there's no way to get the signatures. So then it's on paper, but nothing else. And the only reason it was possible, I might add, to get that initiative, the number of signatures required for the initiative on the Healthy Children's Fund, the only reason you were able to do that is because 4 years ago, I got the county council to put on the ballot a proposal to change the requirement for initiatives so that it would be 8% of the county executive and not 8% of the gubernatorial. If it had still been 8% of the gubernatorial, you would not have had the number of signatures required to be able to get that approved by the auditor. That's the problem, you see. So what this is trying to do is simply empower the people, regardless of party, and the same is true with charter amendment. Why wouldn't you want to make a situation? I can think of situations where Republicans would love to get a charter amendment on there that you'll never get, a supermajority of us to go for, right? And so you're not going to get that any other way. And so that's the whole point here. This is for public sovereignty.
Thank you, Mr. Redding. If there are any hands raised online, Kristen, would you please allow for those folks to speak?
Yes, I don't know whose hand is raised for what, so the person who is appearing as J.D. Douglas, were you interested in speaking to this matter?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Joy
Gilfillan, thank you. Thank you so much for allowing us. I absolutely did not
We lost you, Joy.
I apologize. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I did not understand that I had to speak and register for every single individual thing, so that was not clear. So I appreciate the honor to allow me to speak. I've been the executive director and the president of the Restorative Community Coalition for the last 15 years. And I think this is probably one of the single most difficult, divisive, and complicated issues that we've had to deal with in dealing with the jail and justice system issues, in dealing with public safety issues, in dealing with prevention and mental health issues. And I think it's essential that the public have the option to not have to be divided with public and partisan politics when dealing with justice issues. We've been advocating for restorative justice, regenerative justice, economic justice, any kind of justice. And when you put somebody who carries the weight of a prosecutor, I had to moderate a debate between two candidates who were running for prosecutor a few years ago, and I was actually called on the carpet by somebody who was a partisan who wanted me to change and not conduct my own debate. And that's politics. And politics is costly when we're talking about justice, and it has huge implications on people of different caste, of people on different emotional and physical prowess in debating. So I would recommend that we not do, that we absolutely allow people to run for prosecutor not on a public partisan ticket. And I would recommend that this go into committee so that people can have a chance to actually debate this in an honest and forthright fashion with many people so that we're not afraid to speak. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you.
Chris Fletcher.
If you're speaking, Chris, we can't hear you.
Chris, you need to unmute your mic if you're interested in speaking.
Okay, I saw the big box in the middle of the screen. So, anyways, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, back to the topic that we're actually discussing right now, that the threshold of any vote or number of signatures should be based on the locality of the area that it comes for. I mean, it would only make sense for the city of Bellingham or Linden or Ferndale to base any referendum or initiative type, offerings based on the number of voters in that area. To go to the state, we're going from, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands, and yes, you're never going to meet that threshold. So to empower the people, and it should be difficult, we do need to base it on the actual local or county-wise or state-wise, even federal-wise type of numbers. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it. Okay. I saw Commissioner Morales. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to speak on this issue as someone who has been part of bringing ballot initiatives and can also speak to how difficult it is to gather signatures. It is a huge, huge effort. It requires hundreds of conversations. And yeah, just a huge amount of community effort. I would agree with our public commenter that it does make sense to base a percentage needed on the actual local voter pool, whether that's county, city, etc. I also want to. Is this going on? Yeah. I also want to just echo what Commissioner Redding said about the ability of people to bring forward something that is important to people that isn't necessarily in alignment with a party platform or something that they're seeing reflected elsewhere. In the law, you say that there's no right without a remedy. And in our charter, we have the right for the people to bring forward a way to change, a charter amendment, but really it isn't really a right if they can't attain that. There is no real people's remedy. And so I think it is important, I think, to amend this, whether that is setting both of the numbers for proposals and, for initiatives and referendums the same, or whether there's a slight difference. I'm open to those kinds of suggestions. I do think to me, it favors having a slightly higher threshold to overturn than to propose, given that when you have a clear, similar to like the way our charter works, when you have a clear majority that has expressed its will, it seems like it should take almost a supermajority to overturn that will. And I think that just in principle, not really per issue. So I would be open to that kind of amendment. I don't know if you would be, but I just wanted to put it out there in a discussion format. And thank you for bringing this forward, because I do think this is important, and I do want the people to have a remedy, no matter what the issue is that is important to the people.
Yeah, on the matter of making referendums more difficult than initiatives, I do want to point out that originally they were the same in the charter, and that was the original intent, to make it the same. And what happened was and mea culpa, I'm to blame, because when I proposed that charter amendment in 2001, that was 2021, what am I saying, that successfully passed with the voters, that reset the thing for initiatives and mini-initiatives, just switched that over to the county executive. I didn't notice the referendum part, and that should have been included in there, but it was an oversight. That would have made it even Steven on all of this, and that's why we have that mess there. And I will reiterate, I want to make it possible for the minority to be able to challenge things when they're not happy with what the county council has done. And so I don't want to set it at a higher level. It wasn't at a higher level originally. I just want to fix the mistake. And then on the other thing I want to bring up here, obviously charter amendments, you want to be much more difficult. I mean, really much more difficult than for referendums or initiatives. And that's why that was originally set as a percentage at essentially twice as many, right? And if you look at what would happen if this were adopted, you would need a valid signatures of roughly 12,000, which means with the other 25% that you've got to get to make sure you get the valid signatures, that's 16,000. And look, the highest number ever collected of valid signatures is 8,890, well short of what it would take. So it would be very difficult to do this, even so. And we've never come close to doing it. So all I'm trying to do here is at least make it feasible for that to be able to happen. Nothing more than that.
So we have a motion as stated in
recording in progress.
And this is an amendment to change the required number.
change the required number of referendum or charter amendment signatures to percentage of votes cast at the last county executive election. And I didn't mark a second. If someone seconded that, please let me know.
Second it.
Okay. Any discussion from commissioners who have not yet had a chance to speak? Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, the problem I have with this amendment is that it's like halving everything. So yes, you may be wanting to, help that minority, but sometimes you can get some kooky stuff on the ballot, and voters can be, misled or whatever, and vote that stuff in. So I just feel like I'm going to be a solid no on this, and keeping it as it is should be, just going to keep it as it is.
Commissioner Hopko.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Kelly, and appreciate your thoughts on that. My kind of response that I'm thinking to this, I think there's a couple things, right? I think this proposal is unique in that it's one of the few that we sort of have a test case for the will of the people on a very similar matter. The changes that were made a couple of years ago that passed within 80%, I can't think of 80% as anything other than a mandate. And if we're here to represent citizens, and there's been clearly a precedent where these sorts of changes are overwhelmingly supported by the people, I ought to think that a majority of people would also be in favor of this. And I'm just sort of looking at the numbers, right? I agree that it should be hard to do. But the fact that even with the new numbers essentially having it, the fact that even then the maximum number of validated signatures we've ever collected still wouldn't meet that mark shows me that that's still a pretty ambitious number. And finally, just thinking about this, there's a big concern about money in politics and the effect that has, especially on the ability for money to be used to fund campaigns that mislead voters. And when we start to require really high thresholds like this, that increases the chance or the possibility of outside money being funneled into the county to support measures that might ultimately mislead voters. And if we can make this a little more attainable, perhaps we can hedge off some of the worst excesses of that from happening in our county. So kind of just looking at all of this, I don't see how this is anything other than a no-brainer. We clearly have a mandate from citizens, 80%. Again, I can't think of anything else that 80% of people in this county can agree on. 84%, sorry, thank you. So that's why I'll be voting in favor of this, but I do really appreciate your thoughts, and it's important to consider that as well. Ultimately, we're not making the final call on this. The citizens are going to have to vote on it, and they ought to have a right to do that, especially with the mandate they've already shown for similar things. Thank you.
Commissioner Chadwick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I think initially my thoughts on this are a no, just because it should be difficult to rescind legislation that's been put in place. But again, I also can appreciate some of the thoughts and input, making sure that those that don't feel represented have an opportunity to have their voice heard and maybe make some changes at the legislative level. So one thing maybe to consider is if you're moving from the gubernatorial to the executive race, is increasing the percentage of the referendum to something like 11 or 12%, which puts you at 80. I'm going to go off a number 80,000, say. I think that's pretty close to what the last county executive race was. Maybe a little higher.
Higher, 87. It was 90-some.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
So at any rate, that would put you probably at about 9,000, which is not too much higher than what's already been attained by signatures in the past. So again, I would look at, if you're going to move to, consider it at the local level, which it sounds like there's some interest in that those percentages for the initiatives, 8%, I'm good with that, but I think the referendum should be higher to rescind legislation, but still make it attainable and then leave the other at 15%. So I haven't made a decision one way. I'm still considering what, like I said, I appreciate the input from all sides on this.
Are there any other commissioners who haven't had a chance to speak to this who would like to? See Commissioner Rienstra.
Thank you. I just have a question or a point of clarification, perhaps that's called. So these two numbers have always been the same percentage until 2021, when one of them was changed and the other stayed at that percentage. But prior to that, they were always equal?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Commissioner Ellenboss.
No, go ahead.
Commissioner Bunch.
Please.
Good grief.
I just want to speak historically. When the Board of Freeholders in 1977 considered this, the right for initiative and referendum was one of the main selling points of the charter. Charter counties were not prevalent at that point. And it was a whole new concept. It was the one situation under which county residents would acquire this right as a public body to move forward. At the time, we took a look at it and we worked the numbers back and forth and became convinced that what was then the state's threshold was a reasonable threshold for the county. That's modified over the years. I haven't followed the state that closely. But the Charter Review Commission has visited this 2, maybe 3 times and has made the recommendation to drop from the 15% to, I believe it was 8%. That was about half. And I thought that was a fairly favorable concession to submit as a suggestion to the public, and the public supported that. Now, with additional actions that have taken place, we are now looking at it being 1/3 with the number that is shown on here on the initiative process. Had it still been the 15%, it would have been the 20,500, and it's now 6,300. So we're at 1/3. One begins to wonder whether that is dropping the threshold too much so that it's too easy to do. Now, it may be different in the future with things like federal government cracking down on the money that goes out and comes back in the form of support for things like Conservation Northwest or whatever to go out and do these signature gathering situations. But I think Andrew is onto something here that makes some sense. It does need to be reasonably obtainable, but I'm in full concurrence with what Doug just mentioned, that being you don't want to have it be that simple for the public to overturn a law that's been created by a legislative body, even if they do happen to be on the other side of the fence for my interest. So I've got mixed feelings on this, and I think I could be convinced to change that threshold somewhat, but boy, I'd sure hate to see a charter review, a referendum, initiative, all of those be able to achieve going on the ballot with just 6,000 signatures. I'm not real wild about that. That's my input. That's the history of it and also my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Joe. I just would point out that under this proposal, that would not happen. With the charter amendments, that would still be twice as many signatures as for either initiatives or referendums under this proposal, and it would still be a number well above the total number of signatures that have ever been submitted for anything in our whole history here. So all this would do is make it at least conceivable that we would ever have a charter amendment for the public, something we've never had. The fact that we've never had one tells us that we haven't set the threshold at a level where that's possible. So I'm saying it should still be something much higher than what we've ever raised in the number of signatures, but not completely impossible. And this number of bringing it down to basically 12,000, which is in my proposal, is considerably above anything we've ever raised here. So it would require a massive effort to pull that off. But at least there's the possibility then of having our first charter amendment ever coming directly from the public is what this would allow.
I saw Commissioner Ellenboss and then Commissioner Wright.
So I did reach out to people who worked on the last initiative because there's been a lot of talk of how, reflecting on that work as why we need to make these changes. And that's not the feedback I've gotten at all. Most of these, if not all of these, were highly obtainable, and the numbers were not intimidating whatsoever. So I'm still going to be voting no on this for a lot of reasons Doug said, but in addition, I wanted to add that from having those conversations with those people and not assuming what that process was like.
Commissioner Ray?
Oh, okay. I think, I'm just wondering, I'd like to hear more from Commissioner Redding about the keeping the referendum equal to the initiative, because I heard what Commissioner Chadwick had to say, sounded something I was considering after he mentioned that. And then I guess I'm just wondering, I have other questions, so part of me is wondering if we would want to postpone vote on this until next time. I'm not proposing it, I'm just doing a check of how people are feeling. Anyway, I'm asking Commissioner Redding to talk about his feelings on possibly moving it to 12% for the referendum as suggested by Commissioner Chadwick, and what the benefits or drawbacks of that might be.
I want to give you a chance to respond.
Okay.
Just because I'm hearing a lot of muttering from people in the crowd that have worked on signature gathering and some different opinions here. I'm concerned that the numbers Commissioner Redding is using are the numbers of verified signatures for these past campaigns. My understanding, I don't know this for a certain fact, my understanding from working with the auditor, beyond her verified signatures up to the point where they've reached the number of signatures required to place an item on the ballot, and then stops verifying signatures. My concern is the numbers that are being tossed around here may not be an accurate reflection of the total number of signatures gathered, because I believe the remainder are not counted in those numbers. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's my understanding of the procedure. Might be a great question for the auditor and transparency.
Thank you. I want to give Commissioner Redding a chance to respond, but I did see Mr. Muchler's hand up quite a while ago. Did you have something?
I'm really patient. Did I mention I have 7 kids? I'm very patient. I was just noticing something I'd forgotten. Along with Todd Donovan, I wrote the statement, the FOR statement, 10 years ago that lowered the threshold from 15 to 8% for referendums and initiatives. Didn't change the year where we're counting. That's kind of where we're stuck here. And then I also, with Todd Donovan, wrote the statement that lowered the threshold, the signatures from 20 to 15% for the charter amendment. So I forgot about that. So at the time, we just wanted to make it easier for people to put things on the ballot. But we didn't think about the years that we were measuring, whether it was the gubernatorial year or the charter or the county executive year. I have a question to my friends on the right, and because I'm on the fence on this thing. Here's my question. A referendum is designed to overturn legislation. Legislation is currently done by the county council, which last I checked had 4 Ds and 3 Rs. I know we're not supposed to look at it that way, but we do. And so they're passing legislation, assuming that they're passing legislation that we don't like. The only way to change it is through referendum. Why do we want the referendum to be more difficult than an initiative? I don't understand the argument, so need some help with that. Because right now you have to base it on the gubernatorial numbers, not the county executive numbers. So it is more difficult by some 4,000, looks like 4,000 signatures to overturn legislation using referendum. So maybe I'm misunderstanding the argument, but I'm kind of looking to get off the fence here because I like to vote one. I don't like to abstain. And I don't understand this has nothing to do with you guys over here. It has to do with the folks over here. Why we are against this when it seems like it helps us to be able to bring a referendum in.
John, I'm over here.
I want to Commissioner Wright, ask Commissioner Redding a direct question. Before that leaves your head, I want to give you a chance to respond, and let's see, Commissioner Kelly.
Yeah, so I am a collaborative person, and I am very interested in what both Commissioner Chadwick said and Commissioner Ellenboss said, and they seem to be in agreement there. And as Commissioner Muchler just pointed out, that kind of favors our side to have the referendum at a higher threshold. So I have nothing against it. I've been doing this on behalf of the other side, but I'm way happy to change that to 11, 12%, whatever it is you want there, okay, that makes it a little bit more possible for your side to be able to challenge some of the things we do. And so, yeah, I'm willing to have this moved again to a date certain, and I'm willing to also get that other information you're requesting, like about the total numbers of signatures submitted, okay, and get that there as well. So I'm listening. I'm wanting to see if there's a path here towards consensus. And so I would do the same thing that Commissioner Muchler did and make a motion to postpone this to our next meeting, and with all the additional changes suggested.
Okay, Commissioner Kelly?
Yes, can we have somebody that's seated in the public seating who actually collected the signatures state how many she collected?
Are you talking about the person who gave public comment, Ms. Butenshaw? Or is that what you're talking about?
Can Ashley, how many signatures did you gather?
9,620 were turned into the auditor, and we stopped early, and we could have kept going. Yes.
Commissioner Alamos?
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to actually take a vote on what Andrew just mentioned, but one thing I would suggest is that this is very likely an issue we should bifurcate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's two completely different subjects covered by this motion, and I think if it goes before the public, it probably should be divided.
You mean referendum versus
Charter
amendment?
Yeah, they're two totally different topics with different numbers, and so for clarity, they should be bifurcated. That'd be my suggestion.
I will take that under advisement as well.
Commissioner Wright?
I can get the mic down here, but maybe we need to get clarification about comments from the audience. I'm not sure what procedurally is appropriate, but I was wondering from Ashley Button-Schoen if I was wondering how early you stopped was my one question. Like, how many more do you predict you would have been able to get? And then also, there was so much in the news, I can't remember, and I don't think we should go through it all tonight, that one of the things I was just wondering, like a simple yes or no, was one of the reasons that you chose the initiative process because the threshold for signatures was less. That's not the case then. Okay, so I just wanted a point of clarification on that, because go ahead.
So I'm happy to talk to anyone afterwards. We don't take up time, and I don't break rules here. But we stopped early, and I think, I can only guess, but I can tell you that it would have been easier. And now having gone through it today, I could definitely gather with the people we did it. We can get to that 25,000 threshold. I know we can.
Could you tell me the date, or do you know the date that you stopped?
I have to look and see when we stopped with our signature gatherers, but I'd be happy to provide you with that. And then we went with the initiative because it was the legal route, which we were told to go with legal counsel, and the judge did rule that we did the right thing.
Okay. Thank you. So we have a motion to postpone voting on this amendment to, did you say February 27th?
The next meeting.
Okay. To February 27th, we have a motion and a second. Any opposed to, did you have something? Commissioner Morales?
Can I just clarify one thing?
Pardon me?
I don't know if I was done with discussion. Sorry. I wanted to say that I actually was the person who introduced a different amount for the referendum, although no one seems to have heard that. But also I wanted to say that Eamon over here, Commissioner Collins, did crunch a few numbers. And so would love to kind of have those included in the assessment for next time, looking at like what the threshold looks like at 9%, 10%, 11%, etc. I think that would be really helpful to have in our discussion.
Happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Would you be amenable to having that in the packet for the next time so that we can move on with this vote? Okay, is anyone opposed to approving this motion to postpone by consent? Okay, all those in favor of postpone? I mean, I guess if someone's opposed, we have to call the roll. I think we have to call the roll.
Lindsay Fairmount Moss.
Yes, postpone it.
Holden Caulfield.
Yes.
Brett Kelly.
No.
Maya Morales. Yes. John Butchler.
Yes.
Hannah Ordos.
Yes.
Joel Fitzjordan.
Yes.
Andrew Redding.
Yes.
Jessica Ringstra.
Yes.
Todd Stuck.
No.
Jennifer Wright.
Yes.
Doug Chadwick.
Yes.
Eamon Collins.
Yes.
Liz Garrow.
Yes.
Joe Ellenboss. Joe
Yes,
Ellenboss.
I'm sorry. I'm being coached.
It's okay. What was your vote?
Yes.
Yes.
That motion to postpone passes 13-2.
It's really dangerous when I sit next to them because I'm easily convinced.
The last item that this body previously approved for discussion is Commissioner Redding's resolution to the County Council related to independent legal review of violations of the county charter and code. Okay. Okay. That's okay. I haven't been checking my phone because I have all these papers in front of me. And it's wild over here. Okay, thank you, Kirsten. Staff has just let me know that we actually have to exit the library. So we do have to move all of these things, I would think, to the next meeting. And I would say that that's one of the challenges of meeting all around the county is that we have to adhere to the rules of the place where we're meeting. And so my apologies to everyone in attendance and appreciate the robust discussion. Unfortunately, I'm going to need a motion to postpone the remaining items on the agenda to the next meeting.
So moved. Could we, in that case, agree to put this at the beginning of the agenda on the next?
Are there any objections to picking up where we're leaving off here? Moving this last item to the beginning of the...
So we will finish this agenda and then start the new agenda at the next meeting, is that what you're saying?
We're just at the top of old business.
I think the top of old business, because I think we should hear from the public first. That's what we agreed on procedurally. Would you be okay with that?
As long as it's not coming after everything else and get bumped again. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Understood. We'll do these before the cookies.
Well, it's easy if you just have it the first order of business in this category.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I hear that, and that sounds good. Yes, and speaking of cookies, I wanted to thank Commissioner Ellenboss and Mrs. Ellenboss. Best ginger snaps I've ever had. We do need a volunteer to provide refreshments next time. If no one wants to do that right now, we can do that after. Commissioner Ellenboss.
I just wanted to indicate, thankfully, on my fellow commissioner over here, she deferred having a kiss. So, as I offered last time for her.
I don't want to have to gavel you again, though. Do you have a real thing to say?
Yes, I do. Okay, I wanted to say that we received that copy from the rustlers down the street. And one of the other important things that we did, beside for breaks regularly, was meet at a local watering hole, a coffee shop, or whatever afterwards to try and bend each other's ear on this thing. Clearly, we don't want to get a majority of the body there, but here we've got an open invitation from a place 1 block away, and I would encourage those who wish to meet together to maybe take advantage of that. And we could extend your thanks then to them for providing us with the copy.
Thank you, Commissioner Ellenboss. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned at 9:02 p.m.